priority on Klid's Jarvan, who I believe is the best Jarvan player in the world, with an answer then for themselves at the Rek'Sai.
If both junglers are up, Galio looms as kind of a possible first pick. It's away from the flex picks, but it is something that can be so powerful, and it is a Sylas ban. So this means that Jarvan is just preferred by Klid, going for what has so far been a warrior build every time.
He's played it 2 games, both wins, with a KDA of 12, 2, and 23. Now, Galio is open, and that is also an undefeated pick for Mata, but holy moly, Sona Taric, do they do it?
Well, they could. G2 played it in the finals up against Origin. Oh, they're instantly going to lock it in. SKT, they've led it through the draft.
Papa Smithy, does Teddy play Draven?
You know, he has been known to flex onto it, and this was something we were talking about backstage. One of my biggest concerns was that SKT were going to leave open Sona Taric and just try the Draven Nautilus into it. It's available as a duo if they want it.
Do it, do it, do it! No! Oh. It's a pivot away. Of course, we wanted to see the Draven because it was Draven that helped IG picked up a 16-minute win against SKT Sona Taric.
And the Ezreal doesn't apply that much pressure outside of level 1 when it comes to aggressive trades. The Nautilus is probably going to be picked up. It makes this duo lane accountable, but it's not as aggressive as we usually see. And actually, they're flexing very differently, looking for a support that actually picks up the lane presence compared to something like the Ezreal.
This is very fascinating coming out from SKT. I guess the goal is to use the long-range harass and farm and pressure tools that a Karma and Ezreal does provide to avoid the Sona from getting those stacks and being aggressive in the laning phase.
Or if you want to focus on the Taric, who's a melee champion last hitting at the start, poke him out every time he walks up. So poke, but not necessarily the all-in kill threat of a Draven Nautilus.
Now, excuse my goldness here, but what are the chances that's a top Karma? Let's see how the rest of the draft plays out.
There's time.
I just want to throw it out there, as it looks like G2 Esports have locked in the Irelia as we head into Phase 2.
So now the issue that G2 is going to face is that SKT can ban away the Rek'Sai and a potential second jungler, which means that G2 are going to be limited in that jungle pool, whereas for G2, because they get priority, they can look to ban away some of the obnoxious top laners that Card could want to grab up for himself as a blind pick.
But if we're going to use the word methodical to describe SKT's composition and just the way SKT has played largely this tournament, you know, very much getting themselves into a position where they know their power level. We kind of know the Sona Taric's power level as the game goes on becomes very, very high towards the sort of time where SKT have been sweeping over opponents. So how can they keep that high tempo up, especially if G2 can show us a comp that can actually deal with Klid's impact on the early game?
What fascinates me is that the direction that G2 is going for is very much a team fight style of composition, and where they found the most success during the group stages when they split up the map, when they played the 1-3-1. That is how they got the better of SKT, constantly going for skirmishes, but right now they could be going up in a team fight against one of the best team fighting teams in the world.
And you can see the Vladimir and Azir taken off the table. When I see that Azir ban, I also think to myself, what if Faker runs common mid? I want to see how the rest of the draft plays out. We don't have answers yet, because that Irelia could go to Wonder, to Caps, and we'll need to see who locks it in. Final ban is Rek'Sai.
So Olaf and Hecarim are two junglers here that could be considered that synergize really well with Sona Taric as the game goes on. You want auto attacks to be able to fully abuse what Sona can provide aura-wise as the game goes on. It's also the strongest kind of tempo jungler, but not necessarily going to have winning lanes around the Olafs, which is something to track. SKT, do they look for more team fight, or do they want to reset team fights? Because usually against Sona Taric, a Gragas or something that can team fight AoE reset is kind of a prerequisite. But SKT are kind of in uncharted territory at this point, Betty.
It feels like SKT are just committing to the fight. They're stacking up all the utility. They've gone for Lissandra and Kennen. You couldn't ask for more AoE team fight setup. They have so much engage. They're just going to try and match the Sona Taric in these 25-minute fights.
So they're not looking to reset team fights. They're looking to pick people on the way. If you control the map, and the 5 members of G2 either have to be super predictable down a long lane, but never actually face check jungle, you can maybe stop the order of things. But speaking of stopping, it's a Morgana, and the Black Shield is going to be super high value.
Extremely. And Faker has played Lissandra 11 times this year and won 10 of those games. Let's see what Caps can do on Morgana, because I think Jankos is better.
It is a very suspicious Lissandra timing, because this is in a patch where Lissandra, especially for early lane, has been powered down extensively. A blind Lissandra, usually a very defensive choice, I feel like there must be something compositionally here with the required hard lockdown, but in terms of the 1v1, Morgana, just about nothing happening, Alessandra probably going to be frustrated.
The thing I'm looking at right now is the amount of damage available on both sides, because when you think of late game kind of carries, right? Right now, for G2, you're looking at Aurelia being probably the primary damage dealer. Sure, Sona will get some damage herself, but on the side of SKT, you're looking in at Teddy on the Ezreal, potentially Khan on the Kennen to be those primary damage team fight dealers. And it's just fascinating that we have such like low damage comps compared to what we've had so much of in the tournament. There's so much utility in this game that landing those skill shots, when to pick and choose how to use that utility, will be the determining factor in who comes out in these teams.
And you say low damage comps, I'm seeing a late game where SKT are going to be just answered completely by the Taric ultimate, so getting things done before Sona and Taric can get all their eggs into the basket. The first 20 minutes need to be decisively SKT's, otherwise there's a lot to like about G2.
And welcome back! You're getting a glimpse of the MSI pedestal just a moment ago, where the winners of this year's mid-season invitational will have the trophy displayed with their name for at least a month after the event. It's going to be a very hype, and we need to see whether or not SK Telecom or G2 eSports will have a shot at the title. G2 with the creative start, Mickey is sitting in the top.
Now, the one thing that G2 have not done throughout the group stages of MSI is showcase any kind of special level 1 strats, which they brought out in the final against Origin and caught them off guard. But it's SKT with the leading level 1.
And oh, that's a flash forward. I did not anticipate that from Teddy, and already on the board, SK Telecom.
And this is so important because remember, the only Sona Taric game we had in group stages was the big level 1 where SKT's bot lane lost summoners and then found it hard to lane. Now, it's not quite Draven levels of lane pressure from the Ezreal, but a first blood, a welcome start, and that's going to be a Sapphire Crystal to open the lane for the Ezreal.
Getting that much closer to the early tier for the Ezreal, and a really great way to kick this series off for the side of SKT. Big blunder there from Perks, being isolated by the blue buff, very quickly gets punished.
All right, so let's see what Sona and Taric can do. All of a
trouble.
sudden, though, now Marta's actually replied, so that's a flashless bottom lane for SK Telecom. Marta's going to turn this one around. He's sitting on the Ignite. Keep that in mind if any fights break out.
But suddenly, if you're Jankos, you're thinking of how can I path around to keep bot side protected? Because right now, both of your laners, who one of them is going to be walking up and harassing in the Sona, the other one a melee champion last hitting in the early game in the Taric, and now down their flashes. So if Clid can set up anything bot side, very difficult for Mickey and Perks to react for the foreseeable future.
Clid decided to start on his red buff and actually path up towards the scuttle. So right now he's looking to get some control over the top side of the map, as all of his laners look to have early priority, having the push in bot side, the push in top, and Lissandra already pushed in mid will allow Clid to actually secure what looks to be a 3-buff start.
Yeah, very good starts, and that's a terrifying sign for the best performing jungler at the tournament. In Clid, he has secured that red buff. You can see a response from Caps, who's playing his first ever professional Morgana game, by the way, and it's just the chickens for Jankos.
But Jankos awkwardly started Sweeper to spot if there was topside vision, and it was just a hair's breadth outside of the Sweeper radius, so that means he doesn't know that he's been completely spotted on the top side. SKT very active in the level 1 warding, and that means that G2 are boxing with shadows a little bit when it comes to these map movements.
Yeah, SKT, they have full control over this early game. They have 3 pushing waves. They've already invested good early vision into the river, and this is something we see SKT do a lot in the early game. They want to see when the enemy jungler is looking to contest, and speaking of junglers...
Oh, Marta and Jankos, they're going to be trading here. Here comes Clid, though. Flag and drag is available, won't get the knockup. Jankos defensive flash. Teddy connects with a Mystic Shot, and now Caps has made his way. Looking at Faker, he's coming in behind Caps, and he's going to find him. Gets the root down, the flash is interrupted by the Black Shield, and Caps doesn't flash defensively. SKT are up 1,400 gold.
We were talking about how they had to play on the front foot because the scaling of G2 is a bit of an inevitability. And SKT keep walking up, and it started with Mata going for a second face check. This time, though, able to get another kill, and all Caps can say is he holds on to his flash, but not his life.
SKT are once again pushing this early game advantage even further and further ahead of G2, and it just feels like very simple mistakes coming out from the side of G2, and a lot of props to Clid once again reading the enemy jungler and being there to support this SKT in the early game.
And interestingly, if you kind of step back and see how this game is washing over you, my kind of feeling from it is that G2 are kind of surprised to see Sonatarek up and a default into something that's worked for them in the past, but SKT, from their active level 1 towards their pathing, seem to have much more of a strategy to play against it than honestly they did playing with it.
Well, take a look at this. Teleport coming to the bottom lane. Perks has channeled it already. Caps has made his way down. Remember, it's flashless Mata and Teddy, but it's Jankos that's in trouble. He can't kill Mata. Now G2 are retreating. They invested teleports from mid and from top, and it backfires.
Indecision comes out from G2. We saw the Tarek stun sitting on top of Jankos, but he hesitated. He backed off for a second. They missed the stun and then decide to commit anyway. SKT were waiting for that overextension because the moment it happens, Faker's TP comes through, Clid arrives in the nick of time, and immediately SKT find themselves with their third early kill of the game.
And that clarity of those calls, I think, is on full display. Vedius could catch there because right now it's just another TP that comes in instantly that punishes Jankos when he finally does decide to go aggressive. In the meantime, Khan and Wonder have been very isolated, but if you remember, there was wards and Clid path around topside Scuttle, so the Kennon's happy to walk up and freely get Klepto procs. He's not respecting enemy ganks.
Yeah, definitely not. And as it stands, G2 Esports are down 2,000 gold. Now, I do want to remind everybody that G2 Esports did fall behind when they ran the Pyke into Khan's Jace. And it was mid-game skirmishing, as well as Pyke's passive, that really helped them get back in the game. G2 cannot afford to fall further and further behind because they need that time to scale.
I mean, the difference between that game and this game is G2 don't have a composition that's built for those mid-game skirmishes. They're going very much on the scaling team fight angle, and with the fact that SKT have this kind of a lead, it means that they're better set up to force those fights at a point where they are stronger before G2 can really contest.
And of any team at this tournament, you definitely look to G2 to say, in the mid-game, what tools do they have to rewrite any level of poor early game and be super decisive at map rotation and picks to turn the game around? And I take that point with the Sonatarek, with the more predictable comp, and definitely a little bit more straightforward for SKT to interact with. Maybe that's the reason the Sonatarek was left open.
All right, take a look at the mini-map. Fake is already roamed up. Thank you, observers. This is a 3v2 in the top lane. Caps will be late to the play. Here comes Khan. Vanguard's edge is down, and the slicing Maelstrom deletes Wonder from the map. Now Jankos is being run down. Clid gets an auto off before he runs away. Khan decides to engage. The little Electro Hamster's running forward, but he can't quite chase Jankos down. Caps will not be able to thread the Dark Binding through the minions, and it's another kill to SKT.
Big role reversal to that first game between G2 and SKT. First roam going to Faker. What defined to me the mid lane matchup was the Faker was staying mid, farming out, and Caps was on LeBlanc. He was on Rise. He was making those first rotations. Big change this time for SKT.
And this time around, it was Faker who has priority in the matchup. He is the one that is able to wave clear first and move with his jungler. They set up the wave beautifully, and SKT execute what was a very clean dive. They get the flash out of Wonder to boot. You can also see on the minimap that Morgana is just too late to join the party. Wonder actually flashes out of turret range, and even though Faker is taking all these shots, he knows that he can buy time for the rest of his team to find those kills, and they can juggle this aggro beautifully.
These first rotations are definitely a product of those early wards topside and then a control ward that has only now been cleared out around the red buff for G2. So nice capitalization from SKT, but just again to confirm expectations, we really see a lot of late game scenarios that G2 win from the power of Sonatarek, both vision setup and team fight. Therefore, SKT need to continue this. It's never enough until you explode Sono and Tarek's next.
And it's so important to see SK Telecom continue to adapt. Seeing Faker roaming first, which is something he didn't do against Caps. Seeing 4 kills on the board for SKT already, they're ramping up the tempo. And I've got some numbers just to show you. LCK teams, on average, their kills at 15 minutes. If you go back to MSI last year, average 2.2 kills at 15. They escalated a little to an average of 3.1, and this is the year their career to its level underperformed. And now at MSI, 4.6 is the aggregate for
And it's actually a counterpoint also to the regular season, where SKT were still playing the largely LCK killer style and going for much slower games. 4+ kills per minute, or 4+ kills at 15 for a Korean team is a monstrously high number, but also a product of the meta you require to be competitive at MSI 2019.
All right, let's see whether or not G2 can get on the board. Dark Binding into Soul Shackles will cause a self-cast for Faker. So trade of ultimates, nothing further. Jankos did arrive, but simply too late to the party, and SK Telecom, they will secure that dragon. Now there's a fight in the bottom lane. That's a very good route from Mata. Perks and Mickey turning this one around. No access to the Perks ulti yet. Crescendo's on cooldown. Summoning Heal was in fact used by Mickey, and it's just a lot of trading. I keep waiting for the explosion to happen, but there's just not enough damage yet.
You can also see how this 2v2 works in favor of SKT. Rather than go for those all-ins, rather than try to execute the Sonatarek lane, they've actually built up a very massive lead. And remember, by running the Kleptomancy as well, he can just continue to land this poke and force this duo underneath their tower, where you're still stacking up a lot of gold on the Ezreal. He's now sitting at 4.2k right now on a 2-0-0 Ezreal.
And it's not like the Sona or the Tarek have a big lead over the Karma, so it's about a 1,400 gold lead so far for SKT. Now, the moment that we see, Sona has cashed in her quest. She can start farming, so she has 2 types of income as bot lane.
Well, it's already over. It looks like Teddy's going to be forced to flash defensively. Here comes Caps. Caps gets the kill secure with the soil and then turns his attention to Mata. Mata will get no root, actually, thanks to the Black Shield. And G2 Esports finally find a kill with the roam down bottom.
Able to get into the minion wave, but really good roam timing coming from behind. Seems like Teddy was a bit disconnected from the needs of the team. Top side.
All right, trade of ultimates for now. Klid's already there. Jankos is too late to the party. And Wonder, who is already down 10 CS, concedes a second death.
Beautiful stuff from SKT, answering the kill that happens on the bot side of the map, showcasing that they're not looking to slow down this early game as the TP comes through from Caps. Will they try to force it?
He's got the Super Soaker. Khan's able to at least just sidestep that Dark Binding. Faker was nearby, so as it stands, Vedius, 3,000 gold lead. SKT seem to have all the answers.
And coming into today's series, the key players that we wanted to look at were the 2 junglers, their early impact, and would Faker be able to control or match the roaming from Caps? What we're seeing is, once again, Klid have another fantastic early game, and it is in fact Faker that is roaming around and making a lot of these side lane plays and working very effectively with his jungler to get a lot of early game leads for SKT.
Definitely gives us some insight into those Sandra blind pick. It's not so much the Sandra's power level, but just how proactive you can still be with the small incremental nerfs onto Q in the early game. From a G2 perspective, to bridge into kind of that inevitable Sonatarek late game, what I'm looking at is when Wander can really turn on in the 1v1 matchup against the AP Cannon. Now, Hextech Gunblade does give a lot more lane sustainability, so it kind of sets that timer later, but the moment it's Wit's End plus more coming in from Wander, there should be 1v1 opportunities available for the Aurelia to make this more of a 4-1 game on the side of G2.
It's going to take a little bit of time. You can see the itemization. Gunblade already finished for Khan. Proto Belt for Faker. Sheen as well as Manany stacking for Teddy. And mostly thrift shopping outside of that GLP 800. G2 Esports are still ramping up. They're still farming up the gold to get those items. And just one more quick reference as far as this game has played out versus expectations. SK Telecom have the lowest deaths of any team playing the MSI group stage at 71. G2 Esports at 172 are the second highest. We're seeing it come true once again.
100 less deaths in group stage. They both played 10 games. That's 10 games less, 10 deaths less a game for SKT.
Yeah. You can feel it already. Now, tower trade will be secured here in favor of SK Telecom. They get the first tower bonus. In fact, there's no minions thanks to True Shot Barrage. G2 cannot even equalize. Turret plating's only up for a minute and a half, and look, Shelly's going to get another charge onto the inner turret.
Now, G2 recognized that they couldn't do much up towards the top side, so they actually moved Wonder to mid, and they sent Caps down bottom. Now they're going for a play.
Oh man, Mata's already gone. Gets caught by the Soul Shackles. Tower is now going to be the focus, but it's at what cost? There's 1 kill for 2 towers. That is the definition of not worth. The Rift Herald's going to get another charge, this time onto an inhibitor turret. G2
No one's going back.
Are committing to the play. Where is the support? Jankos is down bottom as well. Klid and Khan are going to back away. 3 towers secured already, and this may be number 4.
I'll be honest, I have no idea what G2 are doing right now. They've just conceded so much gold to SK Telecom, who've now ballooned their early game lead to about 4,000 gold.
All right, let's take a look. There is a teleport coming in here, I believe, from Perks. He will complete it. Faker and Khan are already escaping. They've saved the tower, but they've got an exposed inhibitor, down 4,500 gold, and it feels like SK Telecom are just running around them.
The only small sliver for G2 is they were last bot side, so maybe they'll have first set up for the Infernal Drake that's spawning right now, but it's not worth the cost of losing your inhibitor turret. We're going to watch the replay here. Mata walks up, I assume to buy time, but the TP does seal his fate. He's going to die by hook or by crook to somebody. It should be mentioned that actually taking advantage of a downed inhibitor turret in the top side this early is quite tricky, but SKT, in spite of what I say, just roll up to the Infernal, and what can G2 do to stop them? The answer seems to be very little.
And I think you're 100% right, Bumpy Smitty. It's difficult to get that inhibitor at this stage of the game. What's more concerning for me, G2's decision-making process. We've seen some problematic pathing that
You were
has caused
reaching for
death.
a word there.
I was trying to find the right word. Which was punished by SKT handily, and SKT have just accelerated. They've got the 2 dragons, they've got the 5k gold lead, 4 towers to 0. Bot lane tower didn't even drop.
But we should at least kind of pay lip service to what having a downed inhibitor you can't return to. Downed inhibitor turret very early in the game means. It means someone is farming very safely, and SKT continue to need group, like we see from Khan here. So if there's a chance they can find something, we could see it turn into something, but that requires SKT to slow down.
I mean, I love that you mentioned it, because if we get the opportunity to pan up to Wonder, you'll notice that he's not actually hard pushing that wave. He's just last hitting it every now and then. He's trying to keep the wave here to deny farm from Khan and actually pick up farm for himself. He's actually going to sacrifice the inhibitor so that they can just keep farm funneled into the top side of the map.
I mean, if the call is safe farm minions forever to buy time, that's exactly what they've done.
Wow. Well, it kind of has to be if he's watching his inhibitor go down. So it's very interesting that they're trying to take stock and get something out of what looked like a dire situation.
Coming into this game, we had said that SK Telecom were one of these teams that they look at a playbook, they can play the playbook flawlessly. When they get ahead, they can follow all the steps to win. G2 likes to look at that playbook, go, I don't like page number 3, rip it out, and scribble in their own options. That's an example of what we're seeing.
And let's talk about when that's effective. When there's no Baron to go and take while someone is freezing. That inhibitor will respawn around the time that Baron is respawning, or actually spawning for the first time. So there is actually going to be some weird interactions. You never have this long a lane. Freezing in the 2019 meta is something that LS and other people have talked about, but hasn't really been explored. Let's see if G2 can find a win there.
I mean, so on the one hand, you can be like, sure, I understand the theory, but on the other hand, you kind of have to look at what's currently on your screen. And that is a 5,000 gold deficit that G2 find themselves in. They actually have no pressure anywhere on the map. They have no vision. Like, sure, they've got vision on the bot side of their jungle right now because SKT have backed off, but SKT have full control over the map. And so, like, now I'm like, on paper, surely SKT should just win. But
I love listening to the tone of your voice, because the tone of your voice says, this is really interesting. I would have loved to learn about this in a game against Rogue. Perhaps not in the first game of the semi-final.
Maybe G2 Esports are thinking the same thing. Faker does not follow the claw forward. But again, it speaks to the creativity of this team. Now, obviously, SK Telecom are in the lead. SK Telecom have a gigantic advantage, and they are still anticipated to close this out. But these question marks that G2 have thrown are very interesting to explore. Look at the pressure, even without Baron, on these inner turrets, both middle and bots.
But remember, your goal now as SKT is, okay, they're just sacking things, let's get more. At some point, you have to dive, and then we're talking about diving Cosmic Radiance. That doesn't have item scaling. You're talking about diving Crescendo, a Morgana. There is actually quite a lot of ways to stabilize, but, and I'm kind of in the Vedius camp here, that's very fanciful, because if it doesn't work, then you're going to have 2 inhibitors down, and then we're dealing with too many fires.
At the end of the day, G2 Esports have bet all their chips on their Nexus turret. They have gone
It's
all
17
in.
minutes in, Trevor!
Exactly. They have gone all in on saying, you can have the Rift, we'll have supers in the top lane for a few minutes, and we just need to see. I mean, at the end of the day, again, this is up to SK Telecom to break open those other lanes, and so far they're doing it flawlessly.
I mean, if I'm SKT, I'm not worried right now. Sure, Wonder is getting farmed on the top side.
At least.
Yeah, I'm suspicious. I'm like, what are G2 doing? But at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, you know what? Baron spawns in about 2 minutes. Our Baron taking isn't the fastest, but at the very least, we can force them to come to us. And if they leave their base, then we're in a much better position. Look at us. We've got Trinity Force. We've got the Manamune complete. We got 2 items on Alessandra. We're really strong. All we got to do is find one fight right now, and we pretty much win the game.
And when you look at the timers, 1.5 for Baron, 45 for the next Drake, which is an Infernal. And obviously, for the first time in a little while, G2 eSports are pushing that vision line. Look at the roll, the line of control wards from red buff down to blue buff. Observers obviously highlighting it as Jankos starts to back away. For the time being, SK Telecom are now setting up their Baron vision. And again, I think some of these AoE spells, you know, if G2 can pull them off, great, but it is a very, very, very big deficit, so we cannot have any room for error.
So because of kind of the intentional lull in the game G2 caused by allowing their inhibitor to go down, we can only really rate them on how they deal with contesting Baron, and it's very tricky. The same pick power that allowed SKT to roam early to top and bot is going to catch people on the way, so how they set up here with some tanky members and some temporary invulnerability is going to be fascinating to see. They're probably not so excited to see that's a second Infernal spawn for SKT.
Yeah, that just means that SKT are even stronger than they already are. You know, they've hit a very powerful mid-game spike. Having the additional damage of the double Infernal is something that no team wants to deal with. And on top of that, I just want to draw attention to the experience as well. Notice that Khan is still the same level as Wonder. The bot lane is still the same level as... Ooh, we see a pick.
Oh, we do indeed, but on who? Cosmic Raiders comes down there, buys so much time. Look at the power of Sona and Tarek, but crucially, those ultimates are not available. If SK Telecom keep pressuring, then there's trouble for G2. True Shot Barrage forces a defensive retreat. The tower falls in the interim, and Caps is finally leaving top lane. He finished his recall, now the inhibitor turret's under pressure.
Teddy is so strong, has Ardent Sensor on top of 2 items. They're not looking for the Baron at all, and Wonder's coming from the flank.
All right, the Dazzle will not find a target. G2 are so low. Jankos has got to be very, very careful. Wonder fancying his chances. Already gets one. That's a second kill for G2. Vanguard's Edge buys some time, but look at Teddy. He's flashed away to the right. Faker is down, taken out by Caps, but at what cost? Here comes Clid. Dragon Strike as well as the Karma Q. Picks up a kill. Now Teddy's running onto Perks. He's got double buffs available. But look at the power chords from Perks. He's in so much trouble. Instantly taken down by Teddy. It ends up being a 2 for 4 in favor of SKT. It's not done yet. The ace is available. Caps throws out the Super Soaker. Dark Binding as well as the Tormented Shadow. He gets taken out by Faker though.
And this is a one-sided fight in favor of SKT as they secure the ace 20 minutes into the game.
But Teddy's so greedy to kill the Morgana, they're not actually going to get an inhibitor from this play. They get 2 inhibitor turrets, but he just chased for a further kill on Caps, and that does delay what may now be a turning point for G2.
But we saw SKT just group and force the fight. They said, G2, you have the challenges, otherwise we're going to keep taking these towers. And once you lose this mid-tier 3, Baron is just ours for the taking. So G2 finally decide to go for the fight. Wonder tries to go for the flank. And while initially it looked quite positive for G2, you then, as the fight progressed, saw the gold gap between the two teams.
They just couldn't keep Teddy accountable on the side of the fight. They could only deal with what's in melee range with them in the front and the dazzle range, and unfortunately Teddy is doing nuclear levels of damage right now. But the map reset doesn't actually gain SKT anything other than having to siege onto a turret. They don't down any inhibitors, so actually G2 can push out and contest what may be the kind of clincher for this game in the Baron that SKT will no doubt be looking toward.
So Papa Smithy, after seeing G2 play out that fight, looking at the investment that SKT have had to make, execution is calling for Clid, QSS for Teddy. Now Teleport will just about finish. No, it does not. Wonder will go down. Do you think this is a positive sign for G2? That
No,
additional
he
gold
just died.
investment? Okay, not Wonder. Question before he's dead, buddy. You know, and seeing that G2 still have some teamfight prowess, but the gap just feels too big right now.
You definitely understand the on-the-fly shot calling, but it's fanciful rather than intentional. You never want to choose to give up an inhibitor with that little pushing on your own. So you see the genesis of it. The result, though, let's see.
All right, Dark Binding will tag out Faker. He's dropped pretty low. Khan's spell shield will get popped, and Teddy is putting pressure in the mid lane. Look at those Mystic shots. Very good sidestep from Mata. He gets out of range of that Dark Binding, and G2 have defended the bottom turret.
That's right, SKT are looking for a third inhibitor turret rather than a Baron start or taking an inhibitor. So again, SKT net neutral. After 2 times, we've seen them get what on paper was another match-ending victory.
I legitimately thought that they would just immediately go to the Baron there, right? Rather than try and force down these inhibs with a numbers advantage and with many of their ultimates still available, I felt like they could have forced it, but instead they decided to just keep the pressure in. Now it looks like that they're trying to set up vision back around this area as both teams are starting to regroup and reset.
And when you start to inspect items, again, you can give SKT credit again and again, but there's always a turning point for the Sonataric comp, and it's not always a certain amount of gold difference. It's sometimes just, we have all our items, we're ready to go. So given that SKT are starting to play with their food, they need to find a match-ending pick or Baron very soon.
All right, this is a teleport into the mid lane. G2 feel the Baron pressure. Perks is coming in, but Caps may already be gone. He goes golden thanks to the Hourglass. Khan's coming in with a slicing maelstrom into all of G2! Caps is already down. Perks follows. Finally cleared his kill, but it is a whitewash as G2 get obliterated. Mickey is running for his life, and Teddy's having none of it. Mystic shot, arcane shift, tagging him down, and G2 are ace.
Asking you shall receive. That's when they need to kill the game. Pre-30, they get their picks. The slicing maelstrom is massive, and SKT should win the game here.
Wow, they're onto the Nexus turrets. That's the first one falling. G2 eSports have been obliterated in the opening game. SK Telecom send a salvo and a message to the LEC champions that we are here to win.
Honestly, a very clean game from the side of SKT. They lived up to many of the expectations that they set. Cleared in the early game, doing a fantastic job of finding those leads. Teddy finding that first blood onto the Sona to get that lane ahead, and with 3 pressuring lanes, SKT knew exactly what to do with it and built up an insurmountable.
And unacceptable mistakes on the side of G2 in the early game, conceding those advantages to just unlock and allow SKT to go further.
And when we think of the G2 victories in the past, especially if you're thinking of the second game between G2 and SKT, it's when they let the Pyke do what it does best, go around and kill people. That was kind of the explosive turn in the game. The explosive turn here, kind of crazy, kind of contradiction of terms, was giving up an inhibitor and seeing how that could work out in terms of freezes, a much more defensive one.
It was an explosive call, one that I'm sure we talked about a lot, and I want to hear exactly what the State Farm analyst desk has to say about SKT's win.
Thank you very much, Quick Shot. Not how most would have expected this series to open up, I think. SKT grabbing game 1 in absolute dominant fashion here over G2.
Yeah, and I love that in a best of 5, a combination that SKT obviously tried once against IG, the Sonataric, and lost in 16 minutes, otherwise never really used in the LCK, never used by SKT, apart from that one game. They still leave it open and say, okay, let's see, just grab it. Do you want to take it? Yes. We feel like we can actually still beat it. If not, then you can just ban it for the rest of the series. So I think it's very smart to leave it open in game 1.
So, Frosk, isolating the draft from the game, how do you feel it played out?
I mean, the thing is the scaling potential on Sonataric is massive. Sonataric late game do so much damage. They are not a low damage threat right there. It is a 5v5 monster, but you saw how quickly SKT were able to say this is going to be a 1-item, 2-item game, and how quickly they were able to ramp up game time.
I just want to say that, like, the draft overall and the answer from SKT, like, this, in my opinion, is so heavily G2 favored. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, this is like almost a dream setup for the Sonataric, because they're not even against the scariest early game we've seen. It's not like the Draven that's running crazy with the Bloodthirst at 7 minutes. Like, it's a long-range poke lane they're facing, which will have issues with at least killing you. They have Jankos on Olaf as some sort of like early game bridge as a jungler, and Morgana will just trade farm with the Lissandra and can follow her. So this felt like a draft where you could get to late game.
Yeah, initially when we saw it starting out, we were like, what the Ezreal Karma is your answer that you came up with? For the Sonataric lane, because, okay, yeah, it can poke, and you also have Kleptomancy, but it never really felt like this should be the answer.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, Frosk, it did not take long for this early game to ramp up in favor of SKT, not letting G2's comp scale to the point of dominance.
And I think that there are 2 factors here. The first factor is, it must be said, G2 messed up. You guys messed up big time. So many kills that were so unneeded, so many summoner spells that were just thrown away. But the other side of that was SKT's genius with Clid's pathing.
Yeah, man, I mean, I agree with Kobe on the dodging part as well. Like,
You okay there, buddy?
I mean, I hate watching level 1s like that. It's just such a shame to look at. So yeah, they end up trading flashes. Mata gets forced out, but Mata gets vision of where Jankos is starting, and that's really important. Because the goal now is to stop Jankos from doing anything early. They actually took his red buff. He then feels, okay, I have to make a play somewhere, but it's not the correct answer to run down to your Zona Taric lane. There's such a high chance of getting counter-ganked, and you're just effectively feeding over another kill. And you just can't do that in Zona Taric. You can't be the one trying to make some aggressive plays that completely backfires, and you can't get caught at level 1 either.
And I really want to highlight the deep wards from SKT. This was a common theme. Every time the camera pans down, they're walking in. They push in the lane, walk in, get another deep ward. So they see every time Jankos tries to make a move there with the Olaf, they are ready to close the trap.
Yeah, I mean, absolute dominance out of SKT here in game 1. I want to ask the question about, from G2's perspective, what went wrong? Was this disrespect? Was this, being ill-prepared for the picks that SKT brought out? Like, where does this look for G2 come from?
So the level 1 often can be explained with not having actually talked a lot about what is our plan for level 1 in this specific game, because he was just sitting in the river at the ramp. And it wasn't a surprise or anything. They literally just walked to him. He was like, oh, I see you. And then they just run him down and kill him, right? So there wasn't even anything special there. That was just one of the dumb, unfocused things where after you're like, wait a minute, how did we let this happen, right? But following that part, I think it seemed like they got a little bit desperate with how to stop the early game or stop the bleeding with Jankos. And because it was so hard for him, because he was spotted the entire time, it was very easy to counter-gank him and shut him down. And eventually, Wonder would die. That was going to happen no matter what, because they could just 3-man tower dive him, like we saw there. And that's where it just started going really wrong for G2.
It just felt like G2 had bad reads on what their win conditions were going to be in the lane. Like, it's easy for them to say, okay, this is when this composition turns online, but in the minute trades, the fact that, Caps was going for the kill on Faker with his ultimate against the likes of Lissandra, and yeah, they had Olaf there.
Okay.
I don't like it because then they try to make the play bottom, and if he has ultimate there, and it's easy to say, hindsight analysis there, well, maybe they retroactively went for that gank bottom, but you didn't have perfect information on Clid, and you're also against a Lissandra, and you're expending really valuable cooldowns in a window that if you had saved them, if you had tried to just trade farm back and forth, that maybe you find more, higher opportunities later. Like, you have a 100% chance to make a play versus the 50% chance.
I have to jump in here before we head to a break. Faker going to pick up MasterCard Player of the Game. In a game that was this big of a smash, quite possibly could have gone to anyone, but this man in the mid lane, we've talked about him looking to reassert himself and the dynasty that once was SKT. This is a big step towards that. Game 1 went the way of SKT. We'll see if G2 bounces back when we return.